In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Well, good morning to everybody, and I can see that Joan is there. Good morning, Joan. Christ is risen. Christos anesti. Amasia com. You're now in John 1:35-39. I said about John the Baptist not being the Easter bunny. We were talking about that yesterday or the day before. Yesterday, I think. I think Ati Fodod and Weir. I think that's how to answer that, Helia. Happy and blessed Pascha to you as well. Your prayers, God bless you. So today is promising to be another warm day. And they say up to about, probably not so warm if you're living in Lebanon, but something around about 25 to 30 degrees today. So that for here and at this time of the year is extremely warm. You'd expect it nearer to 14 to 16 degrees. Right at the moment outside it's about 19, 20 degrees. So that's a very pleasant start to the day. I was outside quite early, well, not all that early, 5:30 this morning, enjoying the cool air and the dew on the grass and watering the odd plant that I planted recently, so making sure they survive the day. Good morning, Scott. Yes, your plant is one of them that I watered. It's looking nice. I'm not quite sure how to trim the leaves back, but I shall read all about it and have a go later on. Miss Connie, truly he is risen. Good evening. I hope you're well. And those kangaroos are not eating all your plants again. Joan, okay. It was yesterday, was it? It wasn't so much a joke. I mean, the person really did believe that I believed in an Easter bunny. There we go. So the rest of the day was quite good. Very windy in Lebanon, around about 21 degrees. I wonder why it's so windy. It's not so windy here. Another picture to show you, also from Amelia. There we are. So it's meant to be an Easter cat and an Easter chick, but it reminds me of Perkins and Prankster, who are the canary and the cat that we have at home. Some good news, I'm about to get a dog. My niece is currently looking after it until I come back from Cyprus at the end of this month. Happy New Month, by the way, everybody. In the Catholic Church, they say that May is Mary's month. So we have to, I like that idea of dedicating a whole month to the Theotokos. Very good. And a lot of the plants you see in gardens growing in this part of the world at the moment are named after the Theotokos. So Our Lady's Mantle, Our Lady's Lace. What other things? I've probably gone out of my mind now. But I know the hawthorn and cow parsley and various other things like that, valerian, what's it called, cuckoo pint, things like that. All of them have another name which is to do with the Mother of God, which somehow or other managed to survive the Reformation. Anyway, there we go. Good morning to Sadiq Ahmed and Beverly and Suzanne, who spent an enjoyable weekend in Walsingham. Elf Mabruk, 1,000 congratulations for dog. Yes, his name is Ollie. Good morning, Penelope. Yeah, I'm looking forward to him. Yes. Oh, you're going there by the end of May. Well, that'd be good. I'm staying somewhere near to or in Larnaca. And it is, I don't know which hotel yet, but it's the Lutheran Orthodox dialogue that His Beatitude the Patriarch has appointed me to. And in all honesty, I've done one of these before, only one, and I think I'm out of my depth. They seem to like me going. So also I wrote to the Patriarch saying, please choose somebody else, someone who's less than an idiot, someone who knows what they're talking about. He hasn't done. So I'm afraid Buggins has to do it again. Speaking of which, I've got to bring myself a drink, and I am absolutely full of hay fever. Right, enough of all this whittling on. Let's get to grips with Acts chapter 25, verses 13 to 22. Not a great deal to say in some ways, but here we go. We're around about the year 59. After some days, King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to greet Festus. When they had been there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There's a certain man left a prisoner by Felix, about whom the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me when I was in Jerusalem, asking for a judgment against him. So to them I answered, it is not the custom of the Romans to deliver any man to destruction before the accused meets the accusers face to face and has opportunity to answer for himself concerning the charge against him. Therefore, when they had come together without any delay, the next day I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought in. When the accusers stood up, they brought no accusation against him of such things, I supposed, but had some questions against him about a certain Jesus who had died, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I was uncertain of such questions, I asked whether he was willing to go to Jerusalem and there be judged concerning these matters. But when Paul appealed to be reserved for the decision of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept until I could send him to Caesar." Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I also would like to hear the man myself." "Tomorrow," he said, "you shall hear him." Okay, so verse 1. And after some days, King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to greet Festus. Here we have two interesting people. Interesting, perhaps in a not so wonderful way, not the sort of people you might choose to have a dinner party with. Both of them scurrilous in their own manner. So the first one is King Agrippa. He was, of course, a puppet king of the Romans, and he had become king theoretically on the death of his father. But at that point, this King Agrippa, Herod Agrippa II, was only about 17. So he was kept in Rome until he was old enough to take on the reins for himself. So around about AD 53, he became king, and he remained king on and off until AD 92. When the Jewish revolt took place, he very wisely took the next plane out of Tel Aviv or somewhere to Rome, where he spent a good deal of the rest of his life. He was, as I've already mentioned, the son of Herod, who was the one who executed both John and probably tried the Lord and executed James, and whose bowels then burst open. Like his father, he was interested in architecture and beautiful buildings, and he built lots of lovely buildings, apparently in Jerusalem, considerably beautified it, and he also built plenty of beautiful buildings in what is now called Beirut. It appears that he liked Beirut very much, and that irritated the Jews no end, as you can imagine. The other thing that vexed them a lot was that he had authority to appoint and also to dismiss the Jewish high priest, and he did this fairly frequently. He regularly deposed them. By the time we start on this particular story here, Herod Agrippa is about 31 years old. So he's still a relatively young man, and he lived to be, I don't know, something around between, depending on who you talk to, much later they said he lived to be in his 70s, but it's likely he lived to be about 66, so about the same age as I am now. And then, of course, he went the way of all flesh. So who is this other character that came with him? That is Bernice. Now, Bernice or Bernice, Berenice, another name for her, was also a daughter of Herod Agrippa I, and therefore was the sister of this Herod Agrippa. She had already been married 3 times by the time we come across her in this story, and she gets married to another king. She herself was regarded as a queen in her own right, and at this point she's living with her brother. And I have to say that eyebrows were regularly raised about the relationship between her and her brother, and was not thought to be one of simply reading poetry together in the evenings and picking and arranging flowers. There's no proof at all about this, but as a woman who was thought to be, and a man, both of whom are thought to be fairly scurrilous and putting even their incestuous father to shame, they became bywords for immorality in the whole of the Middle East and even as far as Rome. Later, when she herself went to live in Rome, she struck up a relationship with Titus Caesar, the emperor, who definitely lived with her and she with him. And according to popular rumor, they lived in a marital style relationship. That was relationship at least number 5 that we know about. Some of whom, I mean, the poor girl, she was married off age 13. It was clear that she hated that marriage and divorced her husband again to another king and came back home. Anyway, so she lives with Titus, and Titus, it's quite interesting, there are plenty of statues of Titus. I remember seeing one in Rome a long, long time ago, and thinking he has a sort of the face and physique of a farmhand, quite a rough farmhand, the sort that will plough, big, strong fellow with a face that even a boxer dog would be slightly ashamed to show in public. Anyway, she saw something in him, probably money and power, though it is said that she was personally extremely rich. This relationship was exceedingly unpopular amongst the Romans, especially as she herself frequently heard cases in place of her boyfriend. And she was made a sort of prefect and a judge. So when Titus eventually became emperor, by popular demand, she was sent away. It does rather look as if she came back later, but when Titus died after only 2 years of being emperor, nothing more is heard of her. Presumably, she was pensioned off to go and live on a quiet villa on some little island somewhere and keep her nose out of politics and keep herself away from any other eligible bachelors or any other wealthy married men. Anyway, these two have come to visit Festus, and it's quite clear that they come for a state visit. It is an important state visit. A quick hello back to you, Simon. God bless you. Christ is risen. And they're staying for some time. And the fact they're staying for some time is mentioned in the next verse. Here we go. 14. And when they had been there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there is a certain man left a prisoner by Felix. Okay. So you can imagine they're having their state visit. They've been to Parliament. They've given a speech. They've had several banquets. They've been to Caesarea Disney. they've been to Caesarea. What might else they have? Aquarium. They have been boating out in the open sea. They've caught various fish. They've had lots and lots of barbecues. By this time, Festus is thoroughly sick of them, and they are still sort of wondering whether it's polite yet to go home. So Festus has to think about some other entertainment for them. Oh, what's he going to think of? We've done the palm trees. We've walked along the seaside. We've been to the famous Gold Bazaar. We've had more hot tub baths than we can possibly manage without our skin going wrinkly. Now, oh, I have an idea. There's that wretched Paul. That could be entertaining. Spend a whole morning doing that. There's a certain man left prisoner by Felix, verse 15, about whom chief priests and elders of the Jews informed me when I was in Jerusalem, asking for a judgment against him, verse 16. To them I answered, it is not the custom of the Romans to deliver any man to destruction before the accused meets the accusers face to face and has opportunity to answer for himself concerning the charge against him. Therefore, when they had come together without any delay, the next day I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought in. So, not only will this provide a little entertainment the next day after everybody's had breakfast and brushed themselves up and taken a little coffee and had the odd, baklava or something, but they can have some nice light entertainment about whether or not to crucify somebody or behead him before lunch the next day. So, problem solved. They can spend the afternoon napping and then in the evening have yet another barbecue. Now, it is quite clear from this passage that Festus knows that the Jews really want rid of Paul. They want him taken to destruction, to be killed off. And the second thing that he's saying is that, oddly enough, Roman law, which we would think was not terribly fussy, was far too fussy for the Jewish high priest and for the Sanhedrin, whose duty before God was to uphold justice. God is a God of mercy and justice. And the Jewish high priest here and the Sanhedrin and the scribes and the Pharisees, not so much the Pharisees, Sadducees, were wanting the death of St. Paul rather than for justice to be done. And they were, as we know, planning to have him murdered on the way to Jerusalem. And then finally, it shows that Festus is trying to show to King Agrippa that even in his new rule, he is trying to uphold the niceties of Roman justice. Now, the niceties of Roman justice are a little bit like, the niceties of, say, justice in somewhere like Yemen or in Somalia or Afghanistan or a country like that, maybe even in Iran, where the accused is possibly given 10 minutes to speak on their behalf and then taken out and killed. So even then, Festus is not particularly doing anything grand, but he is saying, we've got to at least show there's something rather about this man. Okay. And then verse 18 and 19, this is back in Jerusalem. When the accusers stood up, they brought no accusation of him of such things as I supposed. Now, there's nothing at all that Festus could find Paul guilty of. There'd been a huge turmoil and fuss, but when it came down to it, there was just lots of dust in the air and nothing to show for it. but had some questions against him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who had died, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. So this is the nub of the problem. And some translations also make it sound as if one of the problems was that the Jews were having questions about their own religion with each other. So they weren't even agreeing with each other. Now, we need to note here the parallels between the trial of the Lord and the trial of St. Paul. Like the Lord, St. Paul is being brought before Herod now, Herod Agrippa. The Lord before Herod Agrippa, number 1, and Paul before Herod Agrippa, number 2. And they're arguing about a case, really, in the end, that goes back to Herod Agrippa II's father's time. But, we're having quibbles about this, and the Jewish people in front of Herod, in front of Pontius Pilate, also had quibbles and disagreements about what the case was against the Lord. They disagreed with each other. Okay? And in verse 20, and because I was uncertain about such questions, I asked whether he is willing to go to Jerusalem and there be judged concerning these matters. Now he makes it sound as if he was doing St. Paul a favor by offering to send him to Jerusalem. But it's almost certain that Festus knew very well indeed that the Jews had planned to murder him on the way. He knew about this plot. It's also that he's uncertain and uninterested, basically, in the Jewish quibbles about their own religion. And he is therefore seeing the resurrection of the Lord as being a Jewish matter rather than a Roman matter. And he's seeing it about a legal matter rather than a matter of faith, all of which is quite interesting. Somebody rather that one of your predecessors pretty well has risen from the dead. You'd have thought this might cause a little stay in your mind where you thought about, well, that's quite an interesting thought. Maybe you ought to have some way of finding out about what to do here. Okay? And then verses 21 and 22, and finally, but when Paul appealed to be reserved for the decision of Augustus, the title there, Augustus, is Sevestion, or something like that, which indeed is still one of the Greek titles for senior clergy. Decision of Augustus, i.e. Nero, I commanded him to be kept until I could send him to Caesar. Okay, so this makes it sound as if it's Augustus Caesar, but it isn't. August, it means somebody rather who is important, who has an august nature. I can't think of a nice other word for august. Important, renown, great, and so on. So he kept him until I could send him to Caesar, and it's Caesar Nero Augustus that he's going to send him to. Okay? So Festus is telling Agrippa that Paul has appealed to Caesar and he is still detained. Agrippa, like Herod with Jesus, agrees to hear the case himself. So here we have that direct mirror between St. Paul's trial and the trial of the Lord, which St. Luke is very keen for us to recognize. The two trials are very, very much the same. Okay, so now we have to wait until next week, sitting on the edge of our seats, biting our nails, wondering what is going to happen to St. Paul. However, if you turn to the end of the Acts of the Apostles, you'll see that he's still alive by the end there. So, spoiler alert. Right. Elton, Christ is risen. I hope that South Africa is doing well. And I guess you'll be entering on into your autumn now, which I haven't been to South Africa in autumn, but I've been to Zambia in autumn. I arrived about this time of the year, in fact. No, I didn't. When did I arrive? I arrived at the end of August, about, golly, an awful long time ago. 16, 17, 19, 20. So, gosh, about 46, 45 years ago, something like that. Yep, that was interesting. Okay, what breed of dog? He is a mongrel, and has something to do with there's Cavalier Spaniel in him and Poodle. He's black with bits of brown and white on him, and he's got curly hair, light curly hair rather than really deep curly hair, so it doesn't fall out and you can brush it and trim it, so he's not constantly shedding hair like some dogs do. Poor old Pooch, he was not taken for any walks at all until recently when my niece took him over, and he's about 3 years old, had never seen a tree before. So I'm hoping the fact that he's a mongrel will mean that he'll live a nice long life and be fairly healthy. He's got no visible problems with him. So quite often overbred dogs have got problems with their hips. He's got no problems there. He's got good teeth. His jaw is correctly aligned with his rest of his mouth. He appears to be able to see and hear properly. He's got no funny lumps or bumps or any at all on him. So, yeah, quite a good dog to have. Very keen on running after balls and bringing them back and dropping them and running again. So hopefully he'll be a good dog. Anyway, there we are. So people to pray for. Carrying on praying for the moment for Nicholas and Andreas, both of whom have now died. And we continue to pray for Nicoletta and for the other Nicoletta, for Daniel, for Hilary, for Joseph and Simon, for Carol, for Georgia, and for Jane, asking God will bless them and keep them. And of course for each other and for the world as a whole, which is going through a really crazily stupid time at the moment. If you like this, please put a thumbs up. If you didn't, put a thumbs down. Thumbs down certainly helps me to get interesting people coming along and looking at it. Autumn has started in Cape Town, now getting cold, early signs of winter. Well, just to give you an idea, Elton, it's about 19 degrees outside here at the moment, and likely to rise to about 28 degrees here in Lincoln, apparently. So that could be cold for South Africa. Remember in Zambia, we're in, of course, the high veld there as well, it could get jolly cold in wintertime. It didn't snow because there's no rain, no precipitation at all. But if you put water out at night time, it'd be frozen in the morning. But usually a nice warm day, even round about Christmas time. Okay, well, I'm going to put a few shorts up later on today. We've got prayers in about half an hour. On Saturday, we have at 8 o'clock in the morning, Divine Liturgy. Then in the afternoon, I have the baptism. In the evening at 5, we will have Great Vespers, and then the Sunday services at 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. God bless you and keep you. Christos anesti, Christos voskresi, Christos enviat, Amasia kam, Christos Amafafuka, and Atikofod, what is it? Christ, I think something like that. Christ Schism, your prayers. God bless you and keep you. There we go. Have a good day. Have a good night. Good night, Miss Connie. Good day, everybody else.